The following podcast is a presentation of This Is Infamous. Listener discretion is advised.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of the Lifted Embargo. This is the movie podcast where we review the brand new movies that are hitting the theaters this coming weekend. I'm your host, Billy Donnelly, who you can find at thisisinfamous.com. And every week I like to bring in another critic to join me in the discussion, bring their perspective to light as well, and offer up a fresh and different point of view as we discuss the movies on the docket. And this week, I didn't necessarily do so. I went out and I got an old favorite. He's the Charles Nelson Riley, as self-dubbed for this particular podcast. You can find his work at USA Today, as well as follow him on Twitter at Brian Truitt. And because it is International Podcast Day, you can also find him on his own podcast, The Mothership. Brian Truitt joins me this week again. Brian, thank you very much, dude.
Hey, thanks for having me yet again.
And I got all the plugs in correct though, so
you did. I appreciate that.
That's what matters. And it is International Podcast Day. So thank you for finding this particular podcast to celebrate the occasion. Also, once again, check out The Mothership, which you can also find on iTunes, which is Brian's Geek Culture podcast, and. If there's any wrestling fans out there, Intelligent Wrestling Conversation, you could also find on iTunes, Stitcher, and the like. So plenty of podcasts. There's other podcasts. There's like millions of podcasts out there. But those are the most important ones.
Just those three.
Yeah, those are the most important ones. So like the rest of them, well, if you have time, whatever. But those three, I can vouch. They're really good. So we have two films that we're going to discuss this week. Now, there are a few other films that are opening this weekend. So I'm just going to, for clarification purposes, to let you know there are other films that are opening as well. Masterminds from Relativity Media is opening, as well as Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, the latest film from Tim Burton. And I also believe American Honey is opening in limited release as well. You can find reviews from those out there in the Twitter sphere, the blogosphere, out somewhere online. You're just not going to find them on this particular episode. We have two other films that we're going to discuss, but just to let you know, there are a few other films out there. If you want to check out reviews for them, I'm sure you won't be able to find a shortage of them. But the two films that we're going to discuss here on this particular podcast are Deepwater Horizon and Queen of Katwe. And I guess Deepwater Horizon is where we'll start. So Deepwater Horizon, directed by Peter Berg, is the biographical reenactment of the Deepwater Horizon explosion and oil spill that took place in the Gulf of Mexico back in 2010. Mark Wahlberg, Kurt Russell, John Malkovich, Gina Rodriguez, Dylan O'Brien, and Kate Hudson star in this film about an oil drilling rig that, due to corporate shortcuts, of course, goes awry, putting its crew in danger. And this is sort of the real life tale of heroism and survival as they all try to fight to get off and ultimately to save the day for those in need on the rig. It is a true life tale. This did happen. Some people, I would imagine, are very familiar. I believe this is actually the worst oil disaster in United States history when it did take place. So, Brian, Deepwater Horizon, what did you think of this film?
I was surprised. I surprisingly liked it. We've had a lot of these kind of true life hero tales recently with Sully and some others. And we talked about Sully before. We talked about how certain real life stories don't need a movie, but maybe Deepwater Horizon didn't need a movie. I mean, that's kind of it's there were so many there was a lot of different heroes. I think 10 or 11 people died total in the explosion and oil spill. in 2010. But I mean, there were a lot of heroes that helped get everybody off it. But this is one I think needed to be told. It was told really well because what it does cool is, it's really, really action packed. I was kind of impressed by how well done the action was. It was tight. It had you kind of like really tense the whole time, but yet it also kind of, it takes a shot at BP. It takes a shot at kind of the oil company bureaucracy that kind of allowed this to happen. They're on the rig. They say, oh, well, kind of, we don't need to worry about these safety things because, we're we're millions behind budget. We're way behind, in terms of days too. So let's just kind of like, let's just keep drilling. Let's there's warning signs. No, let's just keep drilling, and just any disaster happens after that. So it works on a lot of different levels. It's not just like cool action thriller, but it also kind of, there's something deeper there too, in terms of, real life, taking to task this company, but also kind of the emotions of these people and what they went through.
Yeah, we did talk about Sully a couple weeks ago, which we both agreed was a movie that didn't need to be made because there's just not enough to fill out the movie. This clocks in at almost a similar time. I think it's a little bit more than an hour and a half, but it's actually longer. It's 107 minutes. So you got an hour and 47 minutes to sort of tell this story. But the thing that fascinated me about Deepwater Horizon was just how much time it takes to get to the actual explosion on the rig. They take a lot of time to sort of set up the rig itself, the moving pieces that make up the rig, the characters, both the crew of the rig as well as the BP executive personnel that are there to sort of oversee the operation now that they're over budget and behind schedule. And really, as a result, builds the tension of the film so that when the explosion happens, you care. It matters because you've gotten a sense of who these people are and what it is that they're doing. So, Peter Berg is an interesting director as of late because he seems to almost be like a Michael Bay light. I know I've heard people compare him to at this point, which is that, he still has that sort of like rah America sort of filmmaking style, like approach to the stories that he wants to tell. And there are, and Michael Bay has that a lot in the films that he has. So you have like these Americana, like long, sprawling, slow motion shots to touch upon, like, the heartland and real America and whatnot. And you get to sort of like the working class folks that make up America. So in here you have sort of, the oil rig workers who, real blue collar men and women who are doing tough work with their hands on a regular basis. And going in as the film began, I wondered if we were going to get more of that because sometimes it seems to be almost an over glorification of some of those personalities, those professions, those people, by saying like, well, this is these people are the real America at times. But this film doesn't really do that. It starts off a little bit heavy handed, and I think it shies away from that to just sort of show dudes who go to work, like, and because of the job that they're in, they're sort of a family because they're away from their families for, like 21 days at a time. And as a result, they become a family. They care very deeply for one another because of the amount of time that that's spent with one another. So I think that's something that Deepwater Horizon does really well, is that it sort of shows the corporation, the evil mustache twirling BP corporation, which is all about the profits and we got to get the oil out of there. And this isn't our fault. The company's a monster and we need to keep it going. And then you have people like Kurt Russell as sort of the captain, Mr. Jimmy, who is looking out for his workers. Mark Wahlberg as Mike Williams is the electrical technician, I believe, and as a result, he is incredibly smart on on this rig and knows what is right with the rig, what is wrong with the rig. So it sort of shows also this divide between those at the top level of the corporation and those at the bottom level helping the corporation go, and sort of how the level of disconnect and almost disrespect that exists between the top levels and the bottom levels. So I thought the pacing really worked in the film's favor, because it's not until almost like halfway or a little bit more that we actually get the action. But by Berg taking his time with this thing, when the action does happen, it means something. It matters.
Oh, and he doesn't let up with the action. That's the thing, you know, kind of like once that, you know, once you see that mud start coming out of from under the drill, and, you know, it's just splatters everywhere, you know, it's full on, you know, crazy time for like probably about an hour, or probably almost a good like 45 minutes probably, or to an hour. And it just doesn't let up. There's a few moments where you have to, you watch characters make a decision on the fly. It's like, oh, should I do this? Should I do this? But mainly it's just like, you know, it's balls to the wall.
Yeah. Lots of mud flying, you know, so you have oil coming up and going. And on top of that, there's also a thing that Berg does, which is, you know, he's sort of, he shows you the bomb, you know, in early on. So he shows, you know, there's this idea that it's an unstable well. You know, this is the idea, is that there is an unstable well. And what BP wants to do is push forward, even though they're getting test results that are not favorable towards this well, because of how much time and money has already been invested. And the main crux of the disagreement is a cement test, whether or not the cement, you know, miles down under the water, deep down in the Gulf floor, is going to be able to hold and be stable enough for sort of the drilling to work. And what Berg does early on is he goes all the way down to the floor and shows you sort of the bubbles coming up, the shifting of the cement, shows you that this is going to go bad. And as a result, the audience knows something that those on the rig do not know, which immediately ratchets up the tension, because now you're just waiting for it to go bad. So in that respect, it's almost like a horror movie in a number of ways, because you're waiting for those on the rig to be caught up with you. And when they are, it just means that the shit has hit the fan. So once that does happen, you know, now there is an empathy, there's a sympathy for those who are in the middle of this, who are being sort of, you know, burned up in ridiculous amounts of fire and flame, or those who are being tossed into you know, walls and stuck in crevices in the rig, just from the sheer pressure of the release of the oil. So yeah, I think I would agree with you. Once this film, it takes its time to get to the moment, and then once the moment happens, it does not let up. And I think those two mixtures together really made this an interesting watch. I dug it while I was watching it. I was into it. I think there's a couple of moments where Marky Mark is not really on par with the rest of the film. But I think Malkovich is good as sort of the bureaucrat within BP. I think Kurt Russell is really good as sort of this down-home blue-collar captain. And I thought the pieces that they put together on this film probably made it better than it should be. Better than this concept almost deserved to be. But I think that there is also, unlike Sully, enough to fill this film out that it makes it an interesting watch.
Well, and I should have used the term Marky Mark and the Fiery Bunch. I think that would have been great. But one of the other thing too is that you know, because like if you watch Sully, you know Sully's going to make it out alive because everyone knows Sully lived. You know, he's a person everybody knows. The thing about Deepwater Horizon is, you don't know unless you're like deep into the weeds and know a lot of the stuff about the story, and you don't know any of these people. You don't know if they survived or not. You know, the normal person. So you're watching the film and you don't know if is Mr. Jimmy going to get out right? Is Mike going to get out right? You know, kind of Jane the Virgin, don't know if she's going to get out right either. You know, so it's just you're living the danger with them because you don't know when somebody's going to die or not. So and it's effective in that way too. And that's one of the things that, you know, it's good that untold stories about unsung heroes exist in movies, because we get to, you know, it's very much a tribute to those who lived and died on this rig, but also, you know, there's a certain amount of anonymity for the average moviegoer, so that ratchets up the tension because you don't know who's going to let it out alive.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, is that it is dramatic in that way because you don't know if everyone's going to make it out alive. You don't know if only some are going to make it out alive. You don't know if none are going to make it out alive. You don't know if there are going to be some who sacrifice themselves for the good of others, for others to sort of make it out alive. And as a result, that is sort of the, you know, the proverbial edge on your edge of your seat thriller in that respect, because you don't know. And you know, and this is, it's a real life disaster movie. You know, it's no different than watching you know, the Poseidon Adventure or something, and not the garbage remake, the Gene Hackman or Borgnine one, where once again you get a feel for who these characters are, and it's not learning who they are as the disaster's happening. It's everything that leads up to that, so that they feel like human beings, and they don't feel like exposition either. They feel like people who are there. They're there to do their job. It's a dangerous job that they do, and now that they are put in danger, well, I at least got a taste of who they are, so that if something happens to them, I am gonna feel something emotional. You know, I'm gonna feel something for that. It's not just sort of faceless, just fodder for the explosion. This is one of those films that even the smallest characters, you know, even just the guys who work out on the platform, you get a couple of moments with them so that they at least feel distinct. So that if something happens to them, they at least feel three-dimensional. They feel like a person and not just somebody that got wiped out in the name of, well, we needed somebody to die in this moment. So I think that's one of the benefits of sort of taking your time with a story like this, as opposed to, you know, Sully, which we sort of go back to because it's once again a similar sort of real life disaster movie based off of true events. That film didn't treat any of its passengers like human beings. It didn't. They were just sort of there, so that when the plane landed and everybody was okay, well, that's great. But there was no sort of like emotional release of like, oh, thank God that guy made it, or oh man, I'm so glad that this family stayed alive. Here, it's when somebody dies, you're like, oh, shit, and you feel it, and I think that's one of the things that really makes the difference between a good film of this nature and a bad film of this nature, is that if you can't draw your audience into feeling something once the disaster happens, that doesn't mean anything. Because, you know, how many movies can we watch with just like humongous fireballs and giant explosions? Like, yeah, they're cool to watch, but after a while, you see one fireball, you see them all. So you need something to go along with the amount of flames that this movie wants to unleash upon you, and I think it strikes the right chords in doing so.
Well, and what Berg really does that's really smart is that he doesn't end the movie right at, you know, kind of the hey, everybody got out alive part. He keeps the camera rolling. He has catharsis moments afterward of anger, of relief, of like, you know, pain. There, you know, it's probably another 15 minutes of film after that goes on after, you know, kind of, they get, whoever, the folks who survive get off the rig, and that's and that's almost more important than the actual the rig stuff, because then you have families who get back together, you have parents who don't know where their kids are, moms and dads, kind of wives and husbands who wonder where their folks are. So it's really effective in terms of that. That's what really hits you. And then kind of they have a roundup, like 13 Hours did, and a couple other kind of the pro-American kind of movies have done recently, is show the real people, and kind of the where are they now, what has happened with this update. And that goes a little bit farther, because you have the catharsis, and then you have the kind of the epilogue of like, and you really get a sense of like, the reality of all of this.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Is that the film allows the impact to sort of settle in with you, for you to sort of see, you get to see sort of the emotional release that Mark Wahlberg has, in living through this and surviving. You get to see sort of Gina Rodriguez's emotional response when she makes it out of this, and sort of, yeah, and there's sort of this gathering where they bring the survivors back to the hotel after they sort of start making counts. They start seeing like who is here, which part of the crew survived, which didn't. Who is represented in that crew and who is not anymore. And I think that's really what allows these films to hit as well as they do. Earlier this week, we had this train crash in Hoboken, New Jersey, and I'm sure once we see the footage of the actual train crash, once we get to the surveillance cameras and whatnot, it's going to be a pretty astounding visual to be able to see. But in the aftermath, as that's happening, and you're watching, CNN or whatever news coverage of the crash happening, you're focused on, did everybody get out okay? Are there people still trapped in there? That's where your mind starts to go. It's not, oh man, this train, I wonder what that looked like. Which I think sometimes these films get lost in. It gets down to like the humanity of it, feeling something for the tragedy and hoping that other people are okay from that. I think that is what once again separates the good of these films from the bad of these films. And I think Deepwater Horizon comes out on the good end, because it does make what happens, it resonates with you emotionally. It's able to sort of draw you into the humanity of the people who are enduring this tragedy as it's unfolding. You also, another thing that I think Berg also does well is he goes to the response as well. There's something like 41 miles off of the Louisiana coast out in the middle of the Gulf. When they get calls that there was an explosion, the response is like, we're not going to be able to get like choppers out there for like 25 minutes. And once again, that sort of draws you into what's happening, because immediately in your head, as you're seeing these humongous flames shooting up into the sky, you're like, holy shit, these people are screwed. And that once, and once again, it is, he's showing you the timer. He is letting you know how much danger exists, how isolated they are from rescue, and as a result, what it is that they need to do in order to put this together. And also, this isn't a Marky Mark hero piece. This isn't like Mark Wahlberg is the hero of everyone. There are a lot of different people involved in this who have a part in trying to do the best that they can to get themselves, their friends, their coworkers to safety. And I think that's another thing that works in the film's favor, is that it's constantly moving. There are lots of things for it to cover, lots of different areas, lots of different people's responsibilities, as opposed to just like, Mark Wahlberg just like put on his cape and saved the day. So in that respect, like I really like Deepwater Horizon. I was surprised by how much I liked it. I would easily recommend this one to somebody to go check out because I think you'll get a lot out of it. It's entertaining at times, it's angering at times, it's eye opening at times, and overall, I think Peter Berg made a really good film.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a love hate relationship with Peter Berg's filmography, like forever. And it's interesting, kind of, you see really what he can do with this, and now that he's got Patriots Day kind of coming out after this, you kind of wonder, okay, well, he's going to do that justice because, kind of Deepwater Horizon shows you what he can do with emotion and disaster, and that's all what Patriots Day, that's all about. That's what the Boston bombing was all about. So now I'm even looking more forward to that. And I know, he's capable of doing stuff like this. So, it'll be good.
I think Patriots Day is going to be a real interesting film because I think it follows a model similar to this, which is take your time, get you sort of invested in what's happening and the people, and then have bad shit happen, and then sort of the response that follows it, sort of a movie, a very, very much a 3-act structure film that really takes its time and carefully uses the elements to make sure those acts work. I think that could be along the lines of this, and I'm right there with you. I'm not a Peter Berg guy. Lone Survivor, not really a fan. Battleship, definitely not a fan. You'd have to go back. I think
Hancock is terrible. Hancock is one of the worst movies ever.
Hancock is an interesting concept, but much like Last Action Hero, I don't think the execution. It's a great idea. It just didn't work. I think this film, maybe this is Berg finally hitting his stride, and figuring out how to do this. With the material that he wants it, and pay respect to it, and not make it so over glorified and whatnot. I think we could both agree that Deepwater Horizon is pretty good. The next film we're going to talk about is another biographical tale of sorts. This is Queen of Katwe, directed by Mira Nar. This is the Walt Disney film starring David Oyelowo. Sorry, I know. I practiced. I just interviewed him like 2 weeks ago, and I repeat it in my head every time before I sit down to make sure I get it. Lupita Nyong'o, Medina Nawanga, which tells the real life tale of Fiona Mutesi, who is the Ugandan chess prodigy who rose to be a women candidate master after coming up through real hard times in the poor country of Uganda to ultimately find a love of chess, which became her escape from the poor life that really she was born into, to try and find something greater than what it is that her family was sort of just cast into. So, Queen of Katwe, Brian, how did this one do for you this week?
Again, it kind of surprised me. It has a lot of, the pedigree's good. You look at the cast, you look at the director, it's going to get Disney-fied. So I think, you kind of go in knowing that. But it's what I really like about it is she turns it into a sports drama. I mean, this is very, she shoots the chess scenes so well. I mean, and I feel like she should just put a rock, like a rock soundtrack, like an 80s tune on like some of the montages, because it has that kind of vibe. I mean, she makes chess look friggin' interesting. And, in terms of how she shoots it and how she puts, close-ups and, just showing somebody's foot going, but underneath the table. I really like the chess scenes a lot. And kind of on top of that, I think you get the real life tale of Fiona Mutesi and this girl who came from literally nowhere. She lives in the slums. Her and her family, they fight just to get a roof over their head, just to survive. And, and she just kind of takes up chess willy-nilly because her brother's into it. She gets really good, starts kicking everybody's ass on, and she moves up and up and up. And so you have that rocky journey both in terms of, she has her Mickey in term of Robert Contende, who's the local, like a local teacher who's like sacrificed his own job and his money to help out kids in the neighborhood. And he teaches her how to play chess. That she starts kicking everybody's ass. Also, what's kind of cool is the fact that pride hits her pretty hard. She gets a big head, and and she has to take a pride kind of kicks her in the ass a little bit, and she's got to. So there's like a rise and a fall and a rise back up. So there's a lot of interesting things. It's not just kind of like a one-dimensional Disney film, which it easily could have been. But you have, with good acting and a good director, you have something that's actually pretty memorable for a chess drama.
I disagree with you on this one.
Okay.
I was not a fan of Queen of Katwe. I found this to be rather dull. And I think one of the problems is sort of, as you mentioned, at times it does Disney-fy too much of what it wants to do. There's a lot going on in this movie. I think at times Queen of Katwe is just too unfocused with what it wants to try to be, because it tries to introduce a lot of elements of this young girl's life as sort of being obstacles that she needs to overcome, but the film never gets really dark enough for those obstacles to feel like true obstacles. So anytime even something comes up that may appear to pose a problem, the Disney sort of pedigree comes in and sugarcoats it in a number of ways and really sort of takes any sort of hard edge off of it, and softens it and makes it so that it doesn't seem all that bad. And look, I think chess films are interesting and difficult to do because they're not. It's not an action,
it's inherently boring.
Yeah, it's not all that exciting. It's like watching the World Series of poker. It's cool for a while, or just to see how good some people can be at it. But to watch the actual action of it happening, it's not very exciting. And I didn't find the chess scenes to be as exciting as you did. I think I've seen better sort of chess sequences put together. Searching for Bobby Fischer immediately comes to mind because they sort of really trump up the stakes of the chess matches, whether he's playing speed chess or whether he was in the tournaments. The little kid of that movie, and as a result, it sort of ramped up the excitement. It made chess on it, which is unexciting, to be remarkably exciting. This I didn't necessarily find to be all that exciting. I found that there were, because it not only focuses on Fiona, there are also several other chess players along the way who come up with her. It's a little bit scattered in who it's trying to follow at times, and as a result, you don't really get the stakes of any particular match. Like no particular match that Fiona or her friends or her brother is ever involved in ever feel that important. It doesn't ever feel like a do or die. Even when she sort of loses, it's sort of just shrugged off as, well, that's a lesson that we'll learn. And we sort of move from there. You don't really, the disappointment doesn't even really set in all that much, because even when she, I think, loses that point, she becomes sort of a diva, and you almost feel like the loss is good to sort of knock her down a notch. So as not like she deserves it, but it's almost like, wow, that's a humbling experience that you probably needed at this very moment. So look, I think that Oyelowo is good as the teacher. I think Nyong'o is good as her very stern mother, who sort of is all about doing what you need to survive, doing what's best for the family, and sort of being this uneducated single mother at that point, doesn't really grasp and understand the benefits of what her daughter is involved in and how this can sort of get her a better life than the status quo. So I think the individual performances work. Even Medina Nawanga, I think, is very good as Fiona. But the film as a whole, because you're talking about sort of, well, now we're going to bring her sister into it, and now we're going to bring in the fact that they can't have a house right now, and now we're going to bring in the fact that Uganda is kind of a shitty place to live, and or at least the part where they live is. It's trying to do a lot, and I don't think it does any of those elements particularly well. And as a result, this film really fell flat for me.
Well, and I would, Nyong'o, I didn't think was all that great. I think we've seen her in better things, and I feel like this was.
Well, I mean, she does have an Oscar to show for it.
That's true. And but I mean, even in Star Wars, I think you could tell, there, her some acting chops. But I feel like this was just kind of bland. This was just kind of like, the put upon mother role that so many people have played. And I don't think she gets anything. It does anything spectacular with it. Oh, Yellowbow, on the other hand, I feel like this is as much his movie as it is Fiona's. Kind of, because he has his own track that he's going, that he has his own subplot, he has his own story, and that his and Fiona's intertwine. So, but I feel like he just, a dude's a good actor, and he's just like, I think he's one of the most underrated probably people in Hollywood for what he does. It's consistently good as he is. I will give you the fact of like, in terms of, when bad stuff happens, it's kind of like shoved aside. When like their whole house is like, because
like
they
flooded.
Yeah, it floods, and like everything, their whole life is, all possessions, everything went,
their young,
food,
the youngest
clothes,
brother,
everything goes out the door.
The youngest brother is like holding on for dear life not to drown
because the sister bailed. Yeah, and then it's just like, then 5 minutes later, it's all right. Yeah, I will give you that. And it's just that's like straight up Disney, like radio Disney. I mean, it's just, kind of, that's I will give you that's kind of egregious. But I feel like you did mention something interesting about kind of, there is no like, she never has like the Johnny Lawrence moment where there's like one match where she has to beat this person, in order to, to win something or to reach some level or whatever. It is a bunch of like mindless dudes that she knocks off, or nameless dudes that she knocks off. Some of them are probably mindless too, but I think what's more important is the fact that it's a little girl doing this. I think that's more effective because she does meet some girls along the way, but mainly it's just no one thinks she can do anything. No one, she just comes in and it's this poor girl from the slums. No one thinks she's going to do anything, and yet when she starts whipping everybody's ass again, it's a Disney thing. But I feel like I'm in with that because I was just like, you don't see that much. That's a cool thing to watch happen. It's a for the younger folks in the audience, that's kind of an effective tool. Because that's who's going to go to see this movie is like probably little kids because it's family friendly as hell. But so I feel like it's effective in terms of that, even though there's no Clubber Lang and Apollo Creed for her for face off with. It's more about her journey being this female underdog who shouldn't be able to do anything, and yet she ventures past that, and then as we mentioned, she turns into a diva, gets knocked back down to size, and then has to kind of get her back, tie the bootstraps back up and get back out there.
Well, I mean, I think there's also sort of a real missed opportunity here in that the gender role of Fiona is very understated. I think the film deals a lot more with class issues as they are in Uganda, dealing with sort of the elite, those who are at the upper echelon of the Ugandan society, and then sort of the poor slums. And doesn't necessarily do a lot with the gender role of this being a female, a young girl, in a culture that very much sticks women to work early on as children. We sort of see that, but once again, it's really sort of understated. And I don't need like title cards to come up and give me like statistics on how women operate in this society. But I think it's also sort of important to see sort of how the society is almost working to hold her down. She is sort of born into this struggle that the Ugandan society expects her to stay in. They expect her to sort of just be a child laborer and sort of grow up doing what her mom does all the time, and sort of stay in that station of life until she gets married and has kids, and the cycle sort of repeats. It touches upon it in little subtle ways, but I don't think enough to make her journey then all that worth it. Because if you do set that tone that these are the obstacles, sort of that there is very much a ceiling for this girl in where she is and who her family is and what she does, breaking through that ceiling to be as accomplished as she is in chess, I think makes it more satisfying. And the elements are there. The film introduces them along the way. I just don't think it does anything with them of any real value for it to then resonate. I think that might have been what ultimately created some of the disconnect I had with it, is that I just never felt like all of this was all that exceptional. I mean, it's exceptional because she's grasped the game of chess from nowhere. But that she could have just been that. Some people just have God-given abilities that they're able to do, and the cream will rise ultimately. But if the world keeps pushing down on that person as they're trying to rise, I think that ultimately makes their triumph all the more satisfying. And I just never got that out. Even when she finds her triumph, when she finds her victories, as she's accumulating these trophies, none of it really felt all that great to me. I was like, all right, that's good for her. That's nice. But it was never any of those like rousing, like rise out of your seat, like, she did it. Like none of those moments exist within this film. And I think that's just a misfire, because Disney is usually really good at these movies. I mean, like they should have like a whole division of them, like their whole like true underdog real life tales, mostly dealing with sports. I mean, look, they took a Jamaican bobsled team and they made them into like a thing. Many years ago. The Mighty Ducks are like the ultimate underdogs. And yet I find that this film just does. It's too safe. It never wants to push down upon her too much. And I think that is sort of a mistake, because her sort of breaking through that struggle is ultimately what would have, I think, pushed this film to be better.
That's why you need 80s rock songs, because if you put an 80s rock song in there, it's automatically so much more feeling involved. I
mean, look, you could take Joe Esposito and put him over any. I'll take
exactly.
I mean,
somebody needs to remix that on YouTube, like one of those old chess things to "You're the Best Around." That would be the best thing ever.
I mean, everybody who knows me knows the deep love I have for the original Karate Kid, to the point that Jaden Smith is like my mortal enemy just for being in the remake of that garbage. But I love those training montages and whatnot, because they're so cheesy yet so effective. But yeah, I mean, I would have taken Fiona like with a baseball cap that she has to turn around, Sylvester
yes.
Lincoln Hawk style, as she gets ready for her chess match. Just something that makes her stand out, something that makes it her own. It all feels too safe to me. This film feels just too damn safe for me.
What's interesting, I think it's so understated that you had one reading about the fact of like you felt it was very much about class struggles as she's kind of going up. I felt it was more about the gender thing. So it's so understated that they can, it could be read a lot of different ways. I feel like that, like you mentioned, I think you have a point where they could have hit on one of those two or both of those two a little bit harder and leaned into it more to make their point. Whereas now, it's just kind of like a nebulous. However you're watching, whoever's watching is going to take it a certain way. Where they could have been a little bit, she could have sank her feet into, okay, well, it's a gender class thing, or this is a struggle. This is about class struggle instead of gender, or both. She probably could have been a little bit more understated, and I think you're right. I think parts of it are a little bit nebulous in terms of theme.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way to sort of describe it. Is that I wish they would have leaned in on it much harder. Take your lumps. Even though she's a child, kids are resilient. And I think, I think that could have been a part of it. Is we don't want to put the kid through too much. That could be traumatic for kids watching it. No, we hear it all the time. It's not how hard. It's not getting knocked down. It's getting back up. Not how many times you get knocked down. It's how many times you get back up. And I think that's one of those key things in sort of the underdog stories, is that the underdog has to overcome the odds in order for the struggle to be worth it, to get that satisfying ending. And this, all the struggle that they try to throw at her, doesn't really amount to much. I mean, it's here, it's there, but it's so passing, it's so fleeting, that when it happens, the film is very quick to react to let you know, don't worry, everything's okay. And I think that's sort of a cop out. There is a in the gender thing, there is sort of this one. There's this one introduction, and that involves her sister, who is like, she's just gonna like be with a dude and like get out, like be with this sort of unsavory, sort of shadowy figure in the background, and like that's gonna be her way out of the slums. And her mother warns her about it, and it's gonna be, he's this horrible dude, and watch out for him and whatnot, and that's it. Like, and then it'll bring her sister back when it's convenient to sort of show the compare and contrast between the approaches to getting out. The easy way leads to another set of problems, whereas doing the hard work, doing it the right way, while more difficult, is a little bit more satisfying. But it doesn't nearly do enough with that. It only does it when the film conveniently wants it to. So even when those moments happen, they don't do anything. You're just like, oh yeah, I forgot that lady was even in this movie. Oh, that's what happened to her. Oh, that sucks. That seems really like a heavy-handed moral play that you're heaping upon me right now. So because she took the shortcut. So yeah, I wish the film, not dark. Like, it's still Disney, so I don't expect it to be dark. But I mean, look, this is also the same company that like shot Bambi's mom. So like, so and threw Mufasa into a parade of stampeding wildebeests. So, Disney has its issues that it's shown a capacity to deal with. I just felt like it was afraid to get its hands dirty here, and I think Queen of Katwe suffers as a result.
I do agree with you. The biggest issue I had with the whole film was the sister. The sister did not need to be there at all. That could have just been like, I think they wasted 15 minutes total on like her random boyfriend issues and coming to and fro. I think they could have just had a few lines here and there to be like, yeah, your sister, shacked up with a boyfriend trying to get a better life for herself, and then focus more on Oyelowo's, home life or something, or, giving Lupita Nyong'o something more to do, or, that was a strange character. It didn't do much for it.
Yeah, so I think you like this film more than I do, but I think we can agree it should have been a better film. Overall, even if you like it, it should have been better. I'm not sold on this one. I know you are, but I think it's just sort of, It's not there. It's Disney has a long line of successful underdog sports / game movies that I think far surpass Queen of Katwe. And as a result, I'm kind of down on this one. So to recap, Deepwater Horizon, both Brian and I, big fans of Peter Berg's latest, with Mark Wahlberg and Kurt Russell stepping into the heroicism of the exploding oil rig, the true life's tale. So Deepwater Horizon, both of us pretty soundly recommend that one. Queen of Katwe, a little bit more mixed. I'm not crazy about this film. I think it's sort of a wasted, bland Disney sports movie about an uninteresting game as it is of chess. Although one more point I will make about Queen of Katwe, the one thing I did take away that I thought was a positive, since I don't want to leave it like that, is that I thought using chess as a metaphor for life and the lessons that you could take from the game of chess and apply them to your real life, I thought that was at least a positive element that the film incorporated. Other chess films have done that sort of along the way. Other sports movies have done that along the way, taking sort of the game and using it as a metaphor for life, what you can learn from the game and apply it to your real situation. So in that respect, I'll give Queen of Katwe some love on that front. But other than that, I'm still down on it. Brian, on the other hand, likes it a bit more than that. Although I think he would agree. Not wildly crazy about it. It's got some problems, some large, gaping, glaring holes that should have been fixed in a better film.
Look on the other side of the board, Billy.
Yeah.
Look on the other side.
So with that said, those are the two films. So Deepwater Horizon and Queen of Katwe. Like I said, other films are hitting the theater this weekend as well. So if you are interested in those, go ahead and check into them. Brian, before I let you go, let everybody know where it is that they can find you out there on the interwebs.
Sure. I'm on Twitter at Brian Truitt. You can find my stuff at life.usatoday.com, and I co-host the Geek Culture podcast, The Mothership.
So there you go.
New episodes every Friday.
So there you go. Make sure you find it on iTunes, and I'm sure wherever else podcasts can be distributed is where you could find The Mothership. So make sure you find Brian's work out there. Always good stuff to check into. So read it, listen to it, and you'll feel satisfied. As for us, make sure you follow us on social media as well. On Twitter at Tis Infamous. That is for our mothership, the home base of This Is Infamous. So at Tis Infamous, that'll let you know anytime new content goes up. Also myself for all my random ramblings and musings. My stream of consciousness put into the written word in 140 characters or less on Twitter at Infamous Kid. So KIDD at Infamous Kid for all of my nonsense that I put on Twitter as well. Over on Facebook, 2 pages for you to like, facebook.com/tisinfamous and facebook.com/BillyTheKid. Always interesting discussion threads going on. So participate and you will get out whatever it is that you put in. I don't know what that means, but people say it all the time. So just do it. Just get involved on those 2 pages. Like them and get involved over on Facebook. Podcasts can be found wherever podcasts can be found. So you found this particular episode, but you can get the podcast wherever it is that you prefer to get podcasts. So iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Blueberry, SoundCloud. Just do a search for the Lifted Embargo, and this show will come up. All I ask is that you subscribe to the show so that you never miss a beat. Every single episode delivered right to your mobile device, your tablet, or your phone, so that you never miss one from the past or the future. And then while you're there, also rate the show and comment on the show. So if we're doing a 5-star effort, give us 5 stars. If we're doing a 4-star or 3-star or 2-star effort, just keep your mouth shut. But if we're doing a 5-star effort, just take a couple moments, click on those 5 stars. It's greatly appreciated. And jot down a few words. Let us know what we're doing, how we're doing, if you like it, in the comment section as well. So that goes a long way to letting other people know that you dig the show. So subscribe, rate, and comment. Couple of seconds. I'll greatly appreciate it, and I'll thank you till the end of my days. My work can be found at thisisinfamous.com, so whether it's written, audio, or video, you can catch good stuff going up there regularly, so thisisinfamous.com. I want to thank my guest, Brian Truitt, this week. I'll be back next week talking more movies with somebody else. I don't know. It could be Brian again. I don't know. I don't know what the future holds. We'll figure it out together. But stay tuned next week for more discussion about more films on the docket. In the meantime, go out there and find something to watch, because if you look hard enough, there is always something interesting for you to put in front of your face. So have yourself a pleasant, immediate future. I'll see you next week. We're out for now. Peace. The Lifted Embargo is a podcast presentation of This Is Infamous.